I called Alfred Naro.
Call on the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement Amendment Bill. I just want to, as it's fresh and hot off the press, the comments that the previous member has just made, where he's talked about the sham, he's talked about the pulling the wool over the eyes, he's talked about all the things that could go wrong. I just want to read a comment that has been made, which may sort of be of some concern to that member. And here's the quote of the comment. What always haunts one as the New Zealand Prime Minister is, will there be a series of trade blocks you're not part of? Because that's unthinkable for New Zealand, and an exporter and small trading nation. So of course New Zealand has to be in on the action with the TPP and go for the very best deal it can, quote Helen Clark. So that member may stand up there, he may turn around, who was previously the chair of the FOMA, okay, the Federation of Māori Authorities, who knows the importance of a trading nation, who also too knows the importance of that, and yet the quote of the previous Prime Minister, the Labour Prime Minister, has clearly indicated that this is an important process to be a part of. So I want that member to actually think about that, because that goes to the heart of his comments. He can talk about all the things that he's talked about, but when this quote actually states it, it makes it very, very hard. Mr. Speaker, I want to make comments. I wasn't on the committee, but I was actually over in Geneva with the Honourable Annette King, but also too the Honourable Member, David Clendon for the Greens. We were there for the Inter-Parliamentary Union, which is in actual fact the oldest parliamentary association in the world, started in 1889, where parliamentarians can come together. And in that process, Mr. Speaker, there was correspondence from Mexico through to New Zealand and to our Speaker, and asked if there was an opportunity for a multilateral conversation and a meeting in which members who are part of the TPP, who were at the IPU in Geneva, whether they would be willing to come together to have a conversation, to be able to talk about things. Now, obviously, we weren't in the position as those of us who were members to make any negotiations, but it was merely to be able to, as part of the IPU, to have the dialogue, to maybe to update each other on our process of ratification. So in that meeting that was hosted and called for by Mexico, we also too had the delegation from Singapore, the delegation from Malaysia, the delegation also too from Vietnam. We were there, and I have to say that my honourable friend and colleague over here, David Clendon, was there with us as well. And also too, the Canadians, unfortunately, they went into the wrong room. They finally eventually found their way towards us as well. The conversation, Mr. Speaker, was actually about asking of those different members there, so 5 of the 12 that were present at that time, was to talk about their process of ratification. And that's actually at the heart of what this bill is. The Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement Amendment Bill is about the ratification of domestic legislation, which is in agreement with the objectives of the TPPA. So at first we had Mexico that talked about their process. I want to say first of all, Mr. Speaker, there have been comments across the House that have been talked that there's been an international process where people are pulling out of the deals, are actually suspending their ratification process. That's not what we heard of that. And I know that I can have the witness of Mr. Clendon that was here. In fact, Mexico talked about the importance of this deal. Mexico talked about the fact is that not only was TPP significant and important, but they talked about NAFTA, okay, which is the North American Free Trade Agreement, which is a combination of Canada and Mexico and also the United States. What they also, however, talked about their concern, and also to be able to see the outcome of the US presidential race at the moment, because for them that's important. They talked about the fact is that while the rest of the world, and here's some of the comments about the fear, the importance of that free trade agreement with them was that in regards to the United States, that's 5 million jobs that they provide. They are the second largest exported nation from United States goods through into the Mexican market as well. So that became important. Their process of ratification, Mr. Speaker, was quite critically important. They were progressing on. We then heard from Singapore, the Singaporean delegation, which was quite interesting. They were a little bit more matter of fact. They talked about the fact is that for them, they'd already gone through a process. Their consultation, I have to say, probably wasn't as extensive as we have had through our select committee and consultation. However, they too were progressing, and again, their comments were seeing the importance of this TPP agreement as well. We then had Malaysia delegation. They too talked about the importance of the TPP. Again, their process of ratification was going through their process. They saw the importance to be prepared and ready. Obviously, US as being the larger portion of this agreement was quite critically important, but those delegations realised they needed to progress their ratification process in their own domestic forms of legislation as well. We then heard from Vietnam. I know that comments from Fletcher Tabato has talked about the fact is that they've heard that even Vietnam, well, Mr. Speaker, unless something has changed, that's not what we heard from Vietnam. Now, Vietnam talked again for them. They had a process different from ours in their own jurisdiction, but what we heard from that delegation was the importance of the TPP agreement, but most importantly that they were also progressing that as well. Mr. Speaker, I can then say that having spoken to the Chair, Mr. Mark Mitchell, and also to having sat on the TPP Select Committee and subbed on for some of the process of the hearings, of submissions, I was able to report back our process of and progress of ratification here in New Zealand. I talked about the opening up of submissions. I talked about the roadshows and going and engaging into our communities, the consultation process that had taken place, the engaging with advisors, the regulatory impact reports that we had, and also to the second round of consultation that had gone out as well. It was significant, it was important. I have to say, Mr. Speaker, in comparison to the other jurisdictions, and not to be judgmental of them at all, but I would have to say that with some pride that we certainly had gone quite a fair way to engage, to consult, to ensure that the wider public of New Zealand were informed about this piece, about this agreement as well. So, Mr. Speaker, I think that was significantly important. At the end of that, we also too eventually had the conversation with Canada. I mean, for them, and we do agree that in regards to agriculture, we'd like to go a lot further, but they did say that for them, they think that this was an important step as well. I think I also too, Mr. Speaker, want to say that there has been some talk around the fear of the US in regards to this. The conversations that I heard and was privy to was that the fact is that we know that the US sees this as an important part to their trade negotiations. It has to go to the heart of their reputation, as well as the opportunities that it will avail to them in regards to their own economy as well. So, Mr. Speaker, I think that's really important. So, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to just add those comments, having just recently come last week from Geneva, having heard the conversations, having been part of those countries, the comments that were made previously by other speakers that supposedly other partners to this agreement were being gun-shy, that were being afraid, that were pulling out, that were slowing down their process. That's not what we heard, that's not what we saw. In fact, what they would see as more importantly is the ratification in their own domestic legislation and hopefully the opportunities that will avail to them to continue to progress this as well. Mr. Speaker, those are just my brief comments I want to make to this Trans-Pacific Partnership. I believe this is important. I finally want to just add that on the side of the House, those that support it are united. That we are united. I have to say that on the opposition side, that surely that can't be the same story. So when opposition members get up and they talk about that from the Labour perspective, surely they have to question the credibility of their comment. When they know, for instance, in their own midst, in their own caucus, there are those who will not come into the House and speak and be present in here because they know they would speak differently.
Order. The member cannot refer to the absence of Order. I'm ruling. The member cannot refer to the absence of a member from the House. So, the member, Alfred Naru, carry on.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do apologise for that, but I do want to just finish on those comments. I think it's important to say that on this side of the House, we are united, we are supportive of this agreement, we see the importance of this agreement to our economy, to our communities, and we think this is important. So, Mr. Speaker, I commend this bill in the second reading to the House.